Good evening, everybody. Good evening, dear English teachers. Tonight we're gonna start our webinar series, English language teaching approaches and methods and techniques. And today we have also some things for you to remember. We have here this amazing webinar, which is the power of TBL, task-based learning in speaking development. And to start here, I want you to remember to follow us on Facebook. We have already 26,041 million. Well, I actually have a lot of members. I don't know why my numbers are flying over my head today. And we also have 34,478 followers. On WhatsApp, we are more than 4,000 members. We also have on Telegram a lot of members, so we really want you to be part of this. Also, please follow us on YouTube. Remember that whenever we are on YouTube, you can see all the webinars that have been held until now, so be part of this. And also, I want you to remember that we also have a TikTok where you can see many different things related to all what we do, to everything that we do every day, which is related to our teaching. So be part of the community, join all of this. And now we have some instructions for you to follow. First, we have that please type your questions in the comment section. The answers to your questions and comments will be replied by our guest speaker at the end of the webinar in the question time section. Then, about our exit ticket, when finishing the webinar, we will share a link for you to have access to the exit ticket, which will be available for 15 minutes. Then, well, now we're gonna know about our presenter, our guest speaker also here. Miss Pamela is gonna talk about him now. No, Pamela. Miss Pamela.
Hello, my dear Angela. Thank you for this. Well, yeah, we have today a great guest that I have to present him. He's Michael Navarro Nalbarte, and he is a passionate online English teacher and teacher trainer who helps ESL students improve their speaking skills through the DONG approach. He possesses a wide range of teaching qualifications, such as CELTA, Trained Trainer, TKT Core, CLIL, which have enabled him to successfully deliver numerous workshops in the ELT industry, as well as help English educators improve their instruction. Notably, Michael is the author of 2 self-published books, 30 ESL speaking classes for busy teachers, and more than 40 creative warm-ups and icebreakers for your ESL classes. Thank you, Mr. Navarro. The floor is yours. Be welcome.
Thank you so much, Pamela, and thank you so much, everybody, for the kind invitation. I'm happy to be with you one more time. And I like this because every year I feel eager to share something new with the audience, okay? Every year I nurture myself with new knowledge and strategies and techniques that I love sharing with my fellow teachers, okay? And today is no exception. So I'm going to share my screen and I want to ask the audience if you can see my slides properly, okay? So let me know in the chat box. Something that you must bear in mind is that I also have a tablet next to me and I'm reading your comments, okay? So it's important for me to have a lot of interaction in the comment section because I will be asking you a lot of questions, okay? So let me know, please. Can you see my slides? In the chat box, okay? Provide me with some feedback. I just want to make sure you're using the comment section correctly, okay? Yes, 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 I can see a lot of yeses. Very good, excellent. So today we have an interesting topic. Today's topic is the power of TBL in speaking development, okay? Now, TBL stands for task-based learning, okay? Now, what are we going to learn today? Let me read the outcomes, okay? So by the end of the session, the participants will be able to design and incorporate TBL speaking activities into their classes. And by the end of the session, the participants will be able to identify and apply strategies to increase student motivation during TBL activities. So let's begin, okay? So I want to start the session with some comments that I've heard from teachers, both novice teachers and experienced teachers along my teaching career. And I'm going to read these comments aloud, and I want you to share your thoughts in the comment section. I want you to tell me if you agree or disagree with these comments, okay? I'd like to know your perspectives. The first comment is, the best way to teach English is by using the PPP approach. PPP stands for presentation, practice, and production. Okay, that is the first comment that I've heard from teachers. Comment number 2, in order for students to learn, teachers need to strictly follow the curriculum and stick to their lesson plans. And finally, learning does not happen without a course book. Okay, so what do you think about these comments? Do you agree with these comments? Do you disagree? Maybe you partially agree with them. So I'd like to know your thoughts, okay, in the comment section. Feel free to write down your ideas, okay? I'll be happy to react to your comments. Okay, Raymond said, no, no, no. Eliberto said, I agree with the first comment. Okay. Remember, there is no wrong or right answer, right? Because this is subjective. You know what works best for your students. Okay? So let's try to agree to disagree. Gertrude said, I agree with the comment. Okay. Mirka, I completely agree with you. It depends on the students. Okay. I agree with the first one. I agree with the first one. Okay. 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 Nice. So let's see. I'm going to challenge your perspectives a little bit because we as teachers need to be open-minded. Okay. Remember that each student is a unique world. Each student learns in a different way, right? So let's demystify these beliefs. Let me show you. The best way to teach English is by using the PPP approach. Now, every student is a unique world, as I have said previously, each with their own reasons for wanting to learn English. When I started my ELT career, yes, I started using the PPP approach. But along the way, I started to explore other approaches, other methodologies that allow me to improve my instruction and that allow me to allow my students to improve their English even faster. Now, this is subjective, right? It depends. Maybe you're a novice teacher. So first you need to get familiar with the PPP approach. But maybe there are students who want to learn English for different reasons. And maybe there are students who prefer to speak, or there are students who want to practice maybe their pronunciation or speaking skills, and you'd better use a different approach, right? So I wouldn't say that the best way to teach English is by using one methodology. Sometimes it's a combination of more than one methodology. The eclectic approach, for example, right? Now, how do we know that? Well, first we need to conduct a needs analysis and we need to understand the context of our students, right? There are numerous ways why students want to learn a language, right? Our task is to identify what those needs are. And based on the data that we collect from our students, we can make better pedagogical decisions. Yes? Let's continue with the second one. Let's see. In order for students to learn, teachers need to strictly follow the curriculum and stick to their lesson plans. If you want to create meaningful learning experiences, it's important to cater to your students' needs. And you do so by conducting a needs analysis. What is a needs analysis? A needs analysis is a survey, okay? You ask your students different questions, okay, that allow you to understand your students' weaknesses, strengths, but also interests, okay? A question that I always include in my needs analysis is, why are you learning English? Are you learning English because maybe you want to travel abroad? Maybe you are preparing for an academic exam such as the FCE or the CAE test? Or perhaps you have been forced by your parents? Okay, so there are different reasons why students learn English. And it's our duty to find out why our students want to learn a language, okay? So that you can make the learning experience memorable. Yes, personalization is key, okay? And this is something that you need to bear in mind. Okay, exactly. Nerida said something important. Sometimes we come to our classes with a plan, but sometimes the lesson plan doesn't go as expected, and we need to make some modifications, and that's true, right? Because we need to cater to our students' needs, and we need to make changes accordingly. Very good. I like that point that this teacher mentioned in the comment section. Very good. Exactly. Very good, Julie. It's important to know their context. Exactly. And something important, teachers, as with many things in life, each method or approach has their own limitations. Today, we're going to focus on one methodology. I'm not saying that this is the best way to teach English. No, it depends on your context. It depends on what your students need. But let me tell you that this is an approach that I've been using for about 1 year, and it has worked wonders. And this is an approach that I continue using at least from time to time, especially with my group lessons. You can see different ELT methods, right? Each method has their pros and cons. But today, we're going to focus on TBL, task-based learning, okay? So you might be wondering what TBL is. Task-based learning is a lesson structure, a method of sequencing activities in your lessons. What is the purpose of using TBL? As the name suggests, yes, students need to solve a task, a communicative task that involves an authentic use of language. Yes, a task that reflects real-life situations. Remember that when we learn English, students need to know why they are learning English. They don't enroll in a speaking course because they want to learn the simple present or they want to learn the present continuous. The reason why they are learning English is because they want to do something with it, right? And TBL helps students use English in a more authentic way, okay? So instead of completing a lot of grammar exercises or vocabulary exercises, we focus on meaningful conversation. We focus on real-life situations. I'm not saying that TBL doesn't address grammar topics, because it does, okay? But the main purpose of TBL is that your students can produce, that your students can improve their communication skills, develop their speaking skills by solving communicative tasks, okay? What else? TBL lessons promote collaboration and increase student motivation. Yes? If you understand your students' contexts, and if you design a communicative task based on the answers from the needs analysis, your students will be motivated enough to complete the task because they see the purpose of it. Okay, I'm learning English to solve this task because at some point in my life, I'm going to apply it. Instead of learning the simple present or memorizing grammar structures. You see what I mean? And last but not least, it emphasizes communication, helping students develop their ability to use the language in practical contexts. Now, I know most of you are familiar with the PPP approach. Yes. Presentation, practice, and production. So I want to make some comparisons, okay, between PPP and TBL. And we are going to highlight the benefits of each approach, but it's also important to talk about their own limitations, okay? As I have said previously, when you start delivering English lessons, you need to be familiar with a methodology. And most teachers, when they take their ELT or ESL courses, they start to learn the PPP approach because it's straightforward. And it's quite common to use among novice teachers or teachers who are less experienced, which is good, okay? I must admit that when I started my career as a teacher, I started using the PPP approach. Yes, but the more experience you get, the better, because you will find out that there are other methodologies that we can explore and use. Another benefit of the PPP approach is that it's easy, okay? It's an easy format for course books. Gradual complexity, right? There are 3 steps, you know, that the teacher needs to follow and that the students do. Presentation, you present the language, okay? Then the students need to practice, right? They need to reinforce the grammar structure. And finally, they need to produce what they have learned in the previous stages, okay? Gradual complexity, especially if your students are maybe not eager, but if your students fear talking, you know, this is a good way to help them overcome their fears, okay? Now, what are the limitations? Limited real-life context. Sometimes when we apply this approach, we focus a lot on structured exercises. And these exercises that we share with our students may limit students' exposure to authentic and real-life language use. There might be a potential lack of engagement. Some students might find the exercises quite repetitive and dull. You know, oh, here we go, we're doing the same approach again. I know that we have to do exercises here or gut feel activities. So some students might find the exercises repetitive. And I've heard comments from my students saying so, right? Risk of memorization. Sometimes students focus a lot on memorizing structures without a deep understanding of their usage. They might be producing the simple present or the present continuous, but that doesn't mean that they know the usage of each grammar tense. Okay? So, again, each approach has their pros and cons. Let's talk about TBL now. What are the benefits of TBL? TBL motivates a real need for new language. It deals with the student's emerging language, and it's more learner-based. That means that we focus a lot on the student, on the needs of the student. What are the limitations? It might be a bit complex, especially for inexperienced teachers. Designing and implementing tasks may be complex and time-consuming for teachers, but hey, that's why you're here, because today I'm gonna address that, okay? Assessment challenges. Creating standardized assessments for a task-based approach may be a bit complicated. Don't worry, because we're going to cover that too, okay? The good thing about the limitations is that these limitations come with some solutions too, okay? But it's good to know the benefits of each approach and also the limitations that they have, okay? Excellent. Now, before we start, it's important to know what a task is. And I want you to pay attention here because I'm going to show you multiple questions in the next slide, okay? And I'm going to need your participation, okay? So what is a task? A task in TBL involves students using the language they are learning to complete an activity, solve a problem, or achieve a specific outcome. It's important to underline these verbs: complete an activity, solve a problem, and achieve a specific outcome. What is the goal? As I have said previously, the goal in TBL is to promote language learning through meaningful communication. Okay? Rather than just the memorization of grammar rules or vocabulary. Yes. So, having said that, I'm going to share with you a picture, and I want you to tell me if this is an example of a task. In order to make your life easier, next to the picture, you have some questions. When you design a task, you need to ask yourself these questions. And the answers to these questions must be yes. Will the activity engage learners' interest? Is there a primary focus on meaning? Is there a goal or an outcome? Is success judged in terms of outcome? Is completion a priority? Does the activity relate to real-world activities? So, this is it. Write 5 sentences describing this picture. What do you think about this? Is this an example of a task? Let me know in the comment section, please, with yes or no. I'm going to give you a few seconds, okay? Remember, refer to the questions that are next to the picture so that you can answer the question. Is this a task? Yes or no? Let's see. Okay. I can see some no's here, some yeses here. Okay, no, no, yes, yes. Yes, no. Exactly. Good. Good, David. The instruction is general, but there is not a specific goal. Will the activity engage learners' interest? I wouldn't say so, right? It's just a picture, right? So this picture might not be motivating for the students. Is there a primary focus on meaning? Well, they have to write 5 sentences describing this picture, but it's quite limiting. Is there a goal or an outcome? I wouldn't say so, right? I mean, they have to use certain grammar structures to write the sentences, but the outcome or the goal is not specific, as David said. And it's a no for many of these questions, and especially the last one. Does the activity relate to real-world activities? Is this something that they are going to do in a real life situation? I wouldn't say so, right? Okay. Excellent. Good. So it's not a task, right? Excellent. Yes. So probably this is an exercise, right? Or we might use this exercise to maybe if you are testing your students' knowledge of grammar. Maybe if you want your students to practice the present continuous, you might ask them to write some sentences describing the picture. But this is not a task that reflects a real life situation. Okay, excellent. Good, good, Berta, and good, everybody. I can see a lot of no's. Very good. Let's continue. Let's do another example, okay? And I need your help. Yes. Again, it says, do a role play about planning a vacation with friends. One student is the customer, the other, the travel agent. I want you to ask yourself these questions, and I want you to tell me if this is an example of a task. In the chat box, please, with a yes or no. Excellent, Liberto. This one is more communicative. You see, there is a reason or a purpose to communicate. What is the task? Well, students need to plan a vacation with friends. This is something that they might do if they travel abroad or if they are talking with their friends and they want to plan their own vacations. So it reflects a real life situation, right? And we have a role play here. One student is the customer, the other the travel agent. Excellent. I can see a lot of yeses. Very good. You see, will the activity engage learners' interest? According to my needs analysis, yes, my students wanted to learn English because they wanted to travel abroad. And that means that at some point in their lives, they are going to plan a vacation with their friends. So, as a result, they will feel motivated to complete this task. Is there a primary focus on meaning? Absolutely. They are going to do a role play, right? They have to interact. Is there a goal or an outcome? Yes, they need to plan a vacation with friends, right? Is success judged in terms of outcome? Absolutely. Is completion a priority? Yes. And does the activity relate to real-world activities? Absolutely. You see? So there is a huge difference between these two examples. So next time you want to design your own task, make sure to ask yourself these questions first. Okay? These questions will guide you and will help you create and design a task. Excellent. Let me give you more examples of tasks, because this is not the only example. And there are more, but I have written the most common ones and the ones that I use the most with my students. Number one, problem-solving tasks. Students work together to solve a real-life problem using the target language. Information gap tasks. Students share information with each other to complete a task. Role play. Students act out scenarios in which they use the target language to stimulate real-life situations. So these are the examples, okay, of tasks that you can use with your students. As you can see, these tasks promote collaboration as well as critical thinking. But most importantly, these tasks emphasize communication. Yes, because the student needs to speak and share their ideas with their partners. Okay, so let's get practical. Similar to the PPP approach, in the case of TBL, there are also 3 steps that you need to follow. Pre-task. task, and the post-task. I'm going to show you a real example, okay, a TBL class that I've designed with my students. Okay, and we are going to analyze each step of it. This is the context. When I did my needs analysis, I found out that my students wanted to learn English because they wanted to communicate better at work. And this is the task that I designed for them. Plan an office party. Okay? As I've said previously, my students work in a multicultural company. And the only way to communicate effectively is by using English. So I understood their context and I designed this task. Plan an office party. What language do they have to use? They need to know how to use will and be going to, right? At least that is the language that I expect from them to use during the task. So let's begin. Having said that, let's begin with the first step. What is the first step? The pre-task. But what is the objective? What is the aim of the pre-task? This stage aims to prepare the students for the task. Okay? This stage focuses on getting the students excited. You want the students to be ready for the task. And what activities can we try here? Brainstorming with a word web, maybe vocabulary review, or a pre-task language focus. For example, teachers, if the task is to plan an office party, and I want to catch the students' attention, I want the students to get excited because we are going to talk about an office party or parties in general. What question would you insert here? What question would you ask your students to get them excited, to put your students into English mode? Can you provide me with some feedback in the chat box? What question would you insert? Remember the task to plan an office party. You shouldn't forget this, so that the question that you are going to write in the chat box should be related to the task. Okay, so let's see. I'm curious. Let's see. What question would you ask your students? I'm going to give you a few seconds, okay? Excellent. Very good. We have a nice question. Thank you so much, Carola. She wrote, what makes a good party? What an interesting question, Carola, because by asking this question, you are brainstorming a lot of ideas. You are eliciting ideas or responses from your students. You're activating a student's schemata. Yes. And what I would do, for example, okay, is to type the question here. What makes a good party? And then I would elicit, different responses from my students. You see? What a nice question. Very good. Excellent. Okay, nice. We have a lot of questions here. Very good. Excellent. Nice. What makes a good party? Okay. Some of you are talking about the music. Very good. Probably you would hear these answers, right? Some students may say, oh, teacher, the music, the food, the decoration, the theme of the party, right? The good company. Yes. So you see, you are eliciting a lot of answers from your students. So this is one way, yes, okay, to get your students excited, to prepare your students for the task, right? The pre-task. But there are more. Apart from the brainstorming, you can also include a vocabulary review. Yes. This is one that I designed. Match the pictures and the types of parties they represent. So as you can see, we have a lot of parties, and students need to match the type of party with the picture. Okay. This is another activity that you can implement in the pre-task. Excellent. Okay. Of course, you need to select the vocabulary carefully depending on the task, right? As I have said previously, we're focusing on planning an office party. So the vocabulary review will depend on the task, right? But this is just an example so that you can find inspiration and try to use it as well. Excellent. Good. Let's continue. As I have said previously, there are 3 steps, pre-task, task, and post-task. Inside the pre-task, there is a facilitating task. Now, what is a facilitating task? A facilitating task serves as a scaffolding. And you might have heard this term before. When we talk about scaffolding, it means that we help our students, with the tools and language resources they need to engage in the primary language task. Okay? Now, the facilitating task allows students to be even more prepared for the task. Okay? And I want to say something important. I know most of you are teaching beginners. So a facilitating task would be advisable to include, right? Because if you're dealing with beginners, your students might need more help. However, if you are teaching advanced students or intermediate students, a facilitating task might not be necessary. So this depends on the student's proficiency level. Okay? Now, my facilitating task was quite simple. I just wanted to briefly, cover these 2 tenses because my students were about to plan a party. I'm not covering all the details, I'm not teaching this grammar structure explicitly. I'm just touching upon these grammar points, okay? So that they can get a clear idea of what tense they have to use, during the task. Yes, so that is the purpose of the facilitating task. You are not teaching the grammar structure explicitly, but you just want to help them, at least to remind them that since they are going to plan a party, they have to use certain grammar structures, right? Excellent. Now, let's continue. During task. And let me cover the task cycle. When we talk about the during task, there are 3 things we must consider. Okay? The task. And when I talk about the task, you need to give clear instructions. Your instructions must be clear, okay? Because in this stage, your students are going to perform the task. They are going to do the task. So if the instructions are not clear enough, if you haven't used instruction checking questions, chances are that your task or your TBL lesson might fail. So make sure to give clear instructions. If you're teaching online, okay, put the instructions in your screen, right? Or if you're using WhatsApp, take a screenshot and send the instructions to the WhatsApp group, okay? If you're teaching in the physical classroom, so make sure to give the students instructions so that they can see them, okay? Now, this is the task. Students have to complete the task, right? And let me read the instructions. It says, work in person in a breakout room. As I said, TBL promotes collaboration. If you're teaching in the physical classroom, well, you can group or pair your students depending on the magnitude of your class. Together, you're going to plan an office party. Discuss what we're going to do in terms of date, place, guests, food, decorations, and music. Decide who is in charge of what and what actions you will take to make a great party. So each student is responsible for one thing. And don't forget to use the will and going to plan your party. We are scaffolding, okay? Yes, especially if you're teaching beginners, they might need more support, okay? Excellent. And I'm even providing my students with a clear example. We're going to have our annual office party. The HR department is going to let you know the date and the place. Yes. So you see, the instructions are clear. My students know what they have to do. I'm providing them with an example or with a model. Yes, using the grammar structure that I expect from them. And if they don't use the grammar structure, that's fine. Because during this stage, we as teachers act as facilitators. Okay, we are taking notes of what is happening during the task. If some language emerges, you need to take notes. You are not correcting the student in this stage. Let the students do the task. That's why, and I want to emphasize this, it's important to give clear instructions, okay? That will determine the success of the task, okay? So, after that, yes, students need to plan. They need to plan the report. Probably they are rehearsing, okay? They are planning how they are going to present or report the task. So this is very important. And finally, students need to present it, right? Since they are working in groups, okay, each student or participant of the group is going to report what they were expected to do, right? So as simple as that. Task, instructions, planning, students need to rehearse and get ready to report, yes, in front of the class. And it's advisable to provide them with a model. Yes? Excellent. So after doing so, we have the post-task. As the name suggests, the post-task stage focuses on reflection, language analysis, and consolidation of learning from the task. Now, if you are applying TBL for the first time, you need to get feedback from your students. Metacognition is important, but you also need to get feedback from your students. How did your students feel during the task? Did they feel intimidated? Did they feel happy completing the task because maybe the task was connected to their lives? Were there any challenges they encountered or faced while working on the task? And if so, what challenges did they face? Did you find the task helpful? So these are the kind of questions that you need to ask your students, okay? They need to reflect, right? But most importantly, we need to focus on the language analysis. As I have said, when you are, or when your students are doing the task, the role of the teacher is to take notes. So in this stage, you are going to address the problems, the challenges, the language that emerged when your students were completing the task. Personally, I like to use I like to use a Google document. I'm gonna share it with you, okay? Yes, this is a document that I learned to design thanks to a DocMe teacher, you know? And I like this because this is the language, well, that emerged during a TBL lesson. I could hear some students using these words: multitask, responsible for, gadget, technological devices. I could also see some grammar structures that emerged when the students were performing the task or when they were doing the task. I could also hear some mistakes. Yes, and I put the mistakes and I asked my students to correct the mistakes that they made to promote reflection. And finally, the action plan. Okay, maybe your students don't feel comfortable using these two grammar structures like will or be going to. So it's your duty to provide your students with additional activities or exercises to reinforce the language learned during the task. Okay, so you see, okay, so in this case, the TBL allows you to cater to your students' needs because I'm not teaching a scripted language. I'm not following a syllabus. Instead, okay, I'm analyzing my students' context and I'm designing the tasks accordingly so that they can find the task useful. And the results were amazing, teachers. My students enjoyed completing this task. When I asked them the reflection questions, they felt satisfied and happy because they learned how to plan an office party because they were gonna do it at some point, right? And now they feel comfortable and confident to plan an office party with their colleagues. You see? So there is a reason to communicate. Yes, that's why it's important to analyze your students' context. Good. Now, this is what we're gonna do, teachers, okay? I'm going to share with you a task, okay? And you are going to remind me the steps that we have covered, okay? This is gonna be your homework assignment, okay? I want you to explore this. You already have these steps, right? So I want you to explore this and I want you to do it, yes? So that you can incorporate this approach, okay, into your English class. I'm gonna read the objective and the task, okay? Let me share it with you. This is the task. Okay, let me highlight it. You're having a conversation with a coworker about your work. One of your main topics is workspaces and workstations. Take turns describing your workstation to your partner. You can use some of the phrases in the box. The facilitating task, you know, I'm helping my students so that they can complete the task. Now, you're going to help me, teachers. Yes, we're going to design a TBL lesson. Yes, as you know, the first step is the pre-task, right? What activities do we or can we include in the pre-task? I need your help, teachers. So help me in the chat box. What activities can we apply in the pre-task? Let's see. I can see one, very good, vocabulary review. Excellent. If we are talking about a workstation, maybe we can review some vocabulary, you know, things that you usually find in a workstation, right? Very good. What else, teachers? What are some other activities that we can include in the pre-task, the first step? Vocabulary, very good. Brainstorming, very good, Eliberto. Brainstorming, fantastic. Nice. We can ask our students a simple question and we can use a word web as we saw previously, right? Excellent. Very good. Fantastic. So maybe we can ask them, what things do you usually find in a workstation? And you can elicit answers from your students. Very good. Excellent. Very good, Liliana. Brainstorming about office, vocabulary, questions, pictures related to the topic. Excellent, Maria. That is another way. Nice. You see? Ooh, excellent, teachers. After the pre-task, what comes next? What is the second step? Help me. What is the second step? We have already included a brainstorming activity, a vocabulary review, the question. Okay, nice. Excellent, Dalia. Challenging question, okay. Yeah, it depends on the student's proficiency level. Good, Eliberto. The task, the task cycle. Very good, Catherine. Very good, Eliberto. The task cycle. Yes. Excellent. Now, if you think that your students, or maybe if you are using this task for the first time, or if you're applying TBL for the first time, before you move on to the task cycle, you can include the facilitating task, which is in the first stage, the pre-task. A facilitating task can be as simple as providing a model. Okay? If you think that your students need support, that is up to you, because there are some students who are more than capable of doing this task, but there are others who need more support, maybe because we have mixed ability classes. So providing a model might do the trick. As you can see, to reduce the anxiety from my students, I decided to create a model myself. And I used a picture, yes, of my workstation in my previous apartment. Now I'm living in another one. And, you know, they could understand the purpose of the task. Right? Excellent. So, task cycle. What are the 3 things that are inside the task cycle? Let's remember. The first one, task. Okay. Instructions, you know, the instructions need to be clear. Then, good, planning. And finally, presentation. Yes, excellent. Good. Yes. Okay. So the instructions are clear because instructions are here, right? Yes, you have even provided a model. Yes. So students have a clear understanding of what they have to do. Now, they might need to, it's up to you if you want to pair or group your students. It depends on the magnitude of the class, right? But they can now work on the task. And they need to finish it. And as soon as they finish, they need to report it, right? Excellent. And finally, teachers, what is the last stage? Pre-task, task cycle. What is the last one? Excellent. Task planning presentation. That is the task cycle. Let me type it here. Task planning presentation. And finally, the post-task. Very good. Excellent. Fantastic. Yes. And as I said, you can use this Google document, or you can even design your own document, especially if you're in the physical classroom. You can print this document and you can use your notes to address the emerging language or the grammar points that your students were expected to use. You see, this makes your life easier because everything is in order: vocabulary, grammar, maybe some mistakes, right? That that you could spot when your students were doing the task. And the action plan, okay? Maybe they need some extra activities to consolidate the grammar point. Excellent. Good teachers. Excellent. Very good. Fantastic. So, we are coming to an end. Okay. Let's see. Okay. And I want to wrap up this presentation with one quote that I came across yesterday. And I know that at the beginning of the presentation, you all said that the best way, not all, but most teachers said that the best way to teach English is by following one specific approach. But I want to encourage you to explore other approaches, to try out new techniques, new strategies, okay, that allow you to be more open-minded and more flexible with the way you teach, right? In my case, I like to try different strategies, approaches, and that helps me grow as a teacher, right? That makes me more curious. So let me read this aloud. A great lesson plan does not equal to a great teacher. Instead, a great teacher delivers a great lesson to their students. Lessons in the books are just one ingredient of great teaching. Greatness comes when moral values, creative skills, and critical thinking are generated among students. Now, one of the things that I like doing to be more creative is to do things that are not necessarily connected to teaching or education. 1 month ago, I took a clown course. And wow, I strongly suggest taking a clown course at some point in your life because it has allowed me to make my classes more fun. It has allowed me to step out of my comfort zone and to be more curious. You might be wondering, like, but what does this have to do with education? Doing things that are not necessarily connected to teaching allows you to be more creative. The best ideas come when you are not involved in activity that is teaching oriented. When I wrote my first book, the idea came to mind when I was, in one of my trips. The idea of delivering this workshop came to mind when I was taking my clown course. You see, sometimes we need that, teachers. We need a moment of, a moment of entertainment. Sometimes we need to disconnect from work, and you will see that the best ideas will come when you're doing something that is not teaching oriented, okay? And that's it. That's the last message I want to say, okay? I encourage you to explore. I encourage you to try out new approaches, continue reading books, yes. But most importantly, never forget that we are curious human beings, okay? It's important to keep nurturing your mind, okay? Step out of your comfort zone and do things that you have never done before. Believe me, you will be a new teacher and a better human being. Okay, thank you so much. So that was the end of my presentation. I know there are some questions, and I will be more than happier to answer all your questions. Okay, excellent.
Thank you so much, Michael, for this amazing presentation. Now we have some questions. Please wait for some minutes. Can you share, please, your ebook with all of us? Maybe you can share your Facebook page. Thank you, dear Michael.
Oh, can you
Can
see
you
me?
share with us more details about your ebook, please?
Sure, dear. Yes. So, teachers, this is the second book that I've launched, and the one that is more connected and related to the presentation I've made today. The second book that I've created is 40 creative warm-ups, icebreakers, and wrap-ups for your ESL classes. Okay. A few minutes ago, I was talking about the inspiration that I get from doing activities that are not teaching oriented. And this book focuses on that. This book focuses on delivering communicative activities. My book has more than 40 warm-ups, icebreakers that you can try in your English classes. I'm going to share with you some examples so that you can get a clear understanding of what my book contains. Okay? So there are more than 40 activities. This is one. Okay? The feeling scale. So you have the template, you can print it, you can download it, but most importantly, you have the instructions so that you can execute the activity properly. And if you are teaching students from different levels, the instructions are very clear because they help you modify the activity according to your context or according to the level of your students in simple steps. Maybe you want to practice the present perfect. Well, you can also find some communicative activities, right? Each activity has a purpose. All the activities that are here aim to help your students develop their fluency and speaking skills. Okay? Again, they come with instructions. You have a lot of activities, positive self-talk, acrostic poems, some icebreakers you can try in your English classes with some templates. You can print these templates and you can use them in the physical classroom as well, right? Again, instructions, more icebreakers. So the book is complete, okay? This book has more than 100 sales, okay? And it's been like one of the books that have had more success because of that, because it has this communicative element, okay? Remember, the purpose of learning English is that students can speak, that students can develop their English, and these activities help you with that. You can use these activities at the beginning of a lesson, okay? Sometimes we don't know how to begin a lesson, so this ebook will help you with that. Yes, this is one of my favorite activities, the celebrity house. My students love celebrities. I read that because I conducted a needs analysis. So I said, okay, like I'm going to include this activity, in my book, and I'm going to use my students' interest, and I'm going to see the responses. And they responded to this activity well, right? Again, all the activities come with instructions. Yes, there are a lot of activities, as I said, more than 40, warm-ups, icebreakers, and wrap-ups. Yes, y vienen con un descuento. Yes, I have a good discount for teachers, a 20% discount for all the teachers who are watching this webinar now, okay? And you can find information on my website. The information is in Spanish. The price is, I can say the price with a limited offer is 50 soles, yes, if you're from Peru. And if you are not in Peru, you can get your ebook by making a payment of $50 using PayPal, okay? So take advantage of this offer that I'm kindly offering to all the teachers who are watching this webinar now, okay? And feel free to reach out to me. Yes, you can contact me. Yes. Okay, Mariela, I think that's it. Yes, I don't know if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, dear Michael. Yeah, now I'm going to share my screen. Con respecto a lo que acabas de compartir, primero agradecerte una vez más, querido Michael, por la presentación del día de hoy. Con respecto al libro, muy interesante. No sé si tú crees que podríamos compartir para que más o menos vean también aquí todos los maestros que están presentes la utilidad que le puedan dar. No sé si tú crees que puedas aplicar alguna de las actividades que estén ahí en ese interesante libro con la audiencia que está en este momento presente. Muchísimas gracias también por la oferta que estás dando para toda la audiencia presente el día de hoy. Yo creo que de repente lo podrías intentar porque eres súper dinámico y para que vean lo productivo que va a ser cuando lo puedan aplicar también con sus estudiantes.
Okay, yes, of course. Lo voy a explicar en español, ok. Si entramos, teachers, a la página de English with Michael, ok, englishwithmichael.net, hay una sección que dice productos digitales. Y tienes acá los libros, que son 2, y mi recomendación es el 40 Creative Warm-Ups, ya que muchos de mis maestros me piden actividades comunicativas. Te muestro un ejemplo súper sencillo, ¿ok? Esta actividad se llama Unusual Jobs. Tienes las instrucciones, ¿ok? Y te sirve como un warm-up. Recuerda que en el libro está estructurado. Hay 20 warm-ups, 20 icebreakers y los demás son wrap-ups, que son actividades para finalizar una clase. ¿Cómo yo uso las actividades que tengo en el libro? Pues es sencillo. Escojo una de las actividades que quizás esté conectada con el tema que voy a hablar o con la gramática que voy a enseñar, ¿no? En este caso, el tema es Unusual Jobs. Es una actividad sencilla para romper el hielo con el estudiante, para poner en el estudiante en modo inglés. Quiero que produzca desde los primeros 5 minutos de mi clase. Entonces, agarro esta actividad, es Unusual Jobs, y tiene las instrucciones acá. If you had the chance to choose one of these unconventional jobs, which one would you pick and why? Y tienes 6 trabajos inusuales. Train pushers, fortune cookie writers, dog food taster. Es divertido porque no estamos lidiando con los trabajos convencionales, sino desafiando a los estudiantes con trabajos inusuales. Y tienes las preguntas. ¿Qué practico acá? Practico lo que es communication. ¿Cuál de estos trabajos te gustaría escoger? Which of these jobs would you like to choose and why? Okay. Or maybe, what are the functions of a train pusher? El tipo de preguntas va a depender de acuerdo al nivel de tu clase. Igual las instrucciones están detalladas acá. Tienes preguntas de acuerdo a al nivel de cada clase. Como empezamos generando interés, empieza la actividad preguntando a tus estudiantes lo que un trabajo inusual significa para ellos. Pre-teaching, tienes también las instrucciones. Discussion, algunas preguntas extras. Si quizás you are struggling to think of some questions, tienes algunas preguntas que puedes tú escoger y usarlas. ¿Ok? Ahora, si quieres expandir más la actividad, tienes también en las instrucciones actividades extension activities, ¿ok? Otras formas de expandir la actividad y convertir este simple warm-up en una clase de conversación, ¿no? Esa es una. Otro tipo de actividades, como te digo, son los icebreakers, que es lo que nos gusta usar a maestros para que nuestros estudiantes formen lazos. Hecho esta, What movie describes your life? ¿Qué película describe tu vida? ¿Ok? Tienes un template, tienes un ejemplo, tienes las instrucciones también, cómo vas a
Y
abordar.
Michael, ¿pueden editar los templates que entregas o están en un formato en el que ellos lo imprimen y ya o hay forma de que lo puedan editar?
Um, por el momento no hay la forma en la que lo pueden editar, pero sí tienen acceso al template vacío, ¿ok? Así para que lo
Excelente.
puedan rellenar, quizás le pueden hacer algunas modificaciones. A menos los icebreakers son los que entrego así, ¿no? Templates que sí, están totalmente vacíos y lo pueden modificar de acuerdo a ello.
De acuerdo a las ideas que se ven ahí, interesantes, las actividades muy amenas para tener a la clase enganchada, a todos nuestros estudiantes. Muchísimas gracias. ¿Podrías repetir, querido Michael, por favor, la oferta que hay para todos los English teachers que están conectados en este momento a esta sesión?
Así es. Con respecto al precio, ok, estoy aplicando un 20% de descuento para todos los maestros que nos están viendo ahora, gracias a English Teachers in Perú. Esta oferta es válida tanto para el día de hoy, sábado, domingo y lunes. Son 3 días, ok, que le estoy aplicando. Y el precio con la oferta ya incluida es de 50 soles, ok, para profesores peruanos, ok. Si eres un profesor que nos está viendo de México, de República Dominicana o de cualquier otro país, ok, el pago se hace mediante PayPal, ok, y es un costo de 15 dólares, ok. Pero esa es la oferta. Son 50 soles si te encuentras en Perú y 15 dólares si estás fuera de Perú, ok. 20% de descuento incluido.
Muchas gracias, querido Michael, y muchas gracias también por todo lo compartido en el webinar del día de hoy. Y sí tenemos algunas preguntitas, si nos permites robarte unos minutitos más, por favor, para que puedas responder 2 preguntas con respecto al webinar de hoy, en donde hemos hablado sobre TBL, Task-Based Learning. A ver, acá hay una pregunta de Angie Argotti. How we can apply TBL with huge groups?
Okay, with larger classes. Okay.
With large groups.
En el caso de can I answer this question in English or in Spanish?
English or Spanish, it's okay.
It's okay. Okay, fantastic. So if you have a large class, the process is going to be the same, okay? You are going to apply the same stages and the same steps. The only difference is that you need to group your students. Remember that TBL focuses a lot on collaboration. So if you have a large class, the tasks that you are going to design, okay, need to promote collaboration. Your students need to work in groups. You are not going to ask your students to work individually. Otherwise, it wouldn't be productive, okay? It would be better if you could group the students either in pairs or maybe groups of 4 or 6, depending on the length of your class, right? So that they can work together, they can help each other too, okay? And especially if you have mixed ability classes. Maybe there are students who have like a better English level than these weaker students. So it would be better if you could combine or mix weaker students with strong students so that they can help each other. Okay, that would be my suggestion, my advice.
Thank you so much, dear Michael. And I have another question here for you. This is from Clarissa Cruz Chavez. She says, can we use TBL with elementary students or with intermediate students?
Yes, absolutely. You can use TBL with all levels, elementary, yes, pre-intermediate, intermediate, and upper intermediate. And I'm telling you this because the activities or the TBL lesson plan that I showed you today was performed by elementary students, okay? Now, what you need to do well is to scaffold the activity. You need to provide students with a lot of scaffolding strategies, okay? And I'm going to say this in Spanish. Si estás usando el TBL por primera vez, es recomendable que incluyas lo que vimos hoy, que es el facilitating task, que le proveerle al estudiante un modelo para que tenga una idea clara de lo que va a realizar, ¿ok? Quizás si estamos lidiando con estudiantes que ya son más proficient, maybe advanced, no sería necesario darles un modelo porque podría influir en la producción de la tarea, right? Preferible que lo hagan si están enseñando a beginners y si lo están aplicando por primera vez, ¿ok? Proveerle facilitating task, darle bastante support, ¿ok? Si es necesario, pero recordemos que en la etapa del during task, que es el second stage, tienes que dejar al estudiante, tú estás tomando notas, actúa como facilitador y ya lidias con todos los emerging language, el grammar, en la parte final, que es el post-task, ¿ok? So that is my advice, that is my recommendation.
Thank you, dear Michael. And the last question, I think it's an interesting question. This is from Ruth Quispe. She says, how can I manage all the steps of TBL if we only have 2 hours per week? It's effective to divide the steps during the 2 weeks of work. How about the results?
That's good. That's a good question. Yes. Now, there are some lessons, and I must confess, some TBL lessons that, in which it had basically taken me 2 classes, to complete the task. So it's fine if you maybe have 2 hours weekly, you can divide, your TBL lessons, right? There is no need to worry. Another thing that you can do maybe is to provide the students with a lot of strategies so that they can come prepared, right? Maybe that is another thing that I would do, right? But feel free to deliver your TBL lesson into classes, right? I've done the same, yes, and we must consider that other teachers have different contexts, like the teacher who asked that question. So feel free to do so and just explore, right? Try it out and see what the result is. And don't forget, in the post-task, ask your students the reflection questions so that they can tell you how they felt when they completed the task. They can share with you the reactions and if they liked the task, But yes, my answer is yes, they can complete it into lessons.
Excelente. Y yo me imagino, Michael, y para tener claridad y para explicarte también un poquito sobre esta pregunta, me ha interesado mucho porque en realidad en Perú, al menos en las instituciones públicas, hay 2 tipos de modalidades. Una de ellas que es de jornada escolar regular, en donde generalmente se enseña 2 horas a la semana de inglés a cada sección, que no es como jornada escolar completa que enseñan 5 horas a la semana. Asumo que es por eso la pregunta de la maestra, porque definitivamente nosotros sabemos que una de las metodologías más aplicadas, porque realmente también pues resulta y tiene buenos resultados, es el task-based learning. Y interesante el hecho de que nos expliques también de que sí es posible de repente trabajar las fases en 2 sesiones diferentes, pero siempre respetando las fases, ¿no? Los stages de task-based learning, ¿verdad?
Así es. Okay.
Muchas gracias, querido Michael. Yo te pido que te quedes unos minutitos más con nosotros, por favor, antes de cerrar el webinar el día de hoy. Y vamos a conocer entonces en este momento qué es lo que tenemos para la próxima semana y para eso tenemos a Pamelita Salazar, que está, Pamelita está para el Exit Ticket. Pamelita, ¿estás por ahí? Pamelita linda, si nos ayudas, por favor, para invitar para la sesión de la próxima semana, ¿tú crees? No sé si es mi línea, pero la conectividad hoy día nos está jugando en contra a todos. No se está escuchando correctamente, pero no te preocupes, querida Pamela. Voy haciendo la invitación. Miss Mayrita va con el Exit Ticket. Miss Mayrita, sí estamos conectados, nuestros administradores de la comunidad de English Teachers in Perú, que están siempre dentro de la ruta del webinar para poder compartir con todos nosotros. Mayrita, ¿tenemos buena conexión ahora?
Sí, Miss, le escucho, pero el slide sigue ahí mismo.
Sí, sí, no te preocupes. Primero hago la invitación y pasamos al Exit Ticket.
Ya.
Bien,
Ya.
English Teachers, para invitarlos a todos ustedes el próximo sábado a las 6 de la tarde, una vez más, tenemos ya nuestro quinto y miren, ya estamos a puertas de cerrar. Recuerden que en cada sesión nosotros les compartimos el material que amablemente nos comparte también los ponentes, por eso es importante que estén atentos a cada una de las sesiones. Y para nuestro quinto webinar, recuerden que se va sumando también las horas de asistencia para su constancia final. Vamos a tener a un gran ponente. Nuestro speaker es Juan Valenzuela y el tema va a ser Teaching Language Skills and Soft Skills. Un tema súper, hiper interesante, así que no se lo pueden perder. Ahora sí, llegó el momento de compartir con ustedes el Exit Ticket con nuestra querida Pamela Salazar. Pamela. Perdón, Miss Mayrita. Pamelita, sigo sin escucharte bien, no te preocupes. Mayrita Bella, ¿podrías compartir, por favor, el Exit Ticket?
Miss Ari, I'm going to give you the exit ticket. I'm going to spell it in Spanish. Remember, it will be available for 15 minutes, okay? TTPS minúsculas, dos puntos, /CUTT minúscula, punto, LI/4TH mayúscula S, mayúscula U, mayúscula M, mayúscula M, mayúscula R y 2024, ¿no? Como les dije, recuerden que solo va a estar disponible por 15 minutos. Ok, Miss.
Gracias, muchas gracias, Mayrita. Recuerden, por favor, completar bien los datos, sobre todo el correo electrónico, para que les pueda llegar correctamente los materiales que durante la semana se va a estar compartiendo con cada uno de los participantes el día de hoy. Y también recuerden que es importante que respondan de manera correcta a las preguntas, porque eso nos confirma a nosotros que han estado atentos al webinar. Bien, ahora sí, si es que por favor no han podido copiarlo porque se fija siempre en el chat de YouTube, tómenle una captura de pantalla, una fotito, recuerden que tienen que pasarlo a su navegador tal cual, respetando mayúsculas y minúsculas, ¿sí? Para que no tengan ninguna incidencia en ingresar al formulario. Y bien, a nombre de todo el equipo administrativo de English Teachers in Perú, al que vemos en pantalla en este momento, quienes están detrás de toda la organización de cada uno de estos eventos, el día de hoy estamos finalizando un excelente webinar que ha tenido la presencia de nuestro querido Michael Navarro, que nos está visitando una vez más, muy felices realmente por todo lo compartido el día de hoy. Nosotros sabemos de lo dinámicas que son sus clases, lo dinámicos que son los talleres que da también. Así que estamos felices de que haya podido estar presente y por todo lo compartido, Michael, de corazón, y a nombre de toda la comunidad de English Teachers in Perú y los maestros que han estado presentes, miles de gracias, y recibe este aplauso de Mayrita, mío, de parte de todo el equipo administrativo, también el agradecimiento. Tal vez algunas palabras para despedirte de la audiencia.
Sí, muchísimas gracias una vez más, English Teachers in Perú, a toda la audiencia, como yo siempre lo he dicho, hemos empezado desde la pandemia, hemos crecido juntos. Muchísimas gracias, Mariela, y a todo el equipo por darme la oportunidad de siempre compartir conocimientos. Yo cada año vengo siempre con una chispa, quizás de curiosidad, de compartir algo más y aportar mucho más con los profesores, y ese es mi deber, ¿no? Entonces, yo encantado. Como digo, hoy día he tenido un montón de clases, sesiones, pero siempre me doy el tiempo de esa horita o esas 2 horitas de compartir esto con los maestros, y que si no han podido asistir hoy día va a estar en YouTube, y yo sé que eso va a perdurar en el tiempo. Entonces van a poder verlo ya sea en otro momento, pueden volver a repetir la sesión, y eso es lo bonito, dejar un legado y hacer que las personas se eduquen más y seguir compartiendo el conocimiento, ¿no? Que no nos quedemos siempre aportando a los demás, y eso es lo que a mí me da felicidad, ¿no? Que es el hecho de compartir con otros maestros. Me encanta eso. Muchas gracias una vez más.
Gracias, mil gracias a ti. Seguramente vamos a tener próximas ediciones. Esperamos siempre poder contar con tu presencia, porque para nosotros eres parte de la comunidad, parte de la familia ETiP. Muchas gracias, querido Michael. Con ustedes el día de hoy hemos estado el equipo de administradores, mis dos administradoras a las que el día de hoy la tecnología pues les ha jugado una mala pasada, pero aquí estamos nosotras, Mayrita, mi persona, y detrás de toda la transmisión siempre ahí, Teacher Ortega, apoyando en la comunidad. Que tengan un hermoso fin de semana, así que nos vemos el próximo sábado en un webinar más. Ahí, Mayrita, nos estamos despidiendo. Mayrita linda. Michael,